there's a time I moved to a house, which I liked actually. But I moved in, I saw the house on a Tuesday, liked it, moved in on a Thursday. I wish I had come to see it on Sunday afternoon.
Oh no, what happens on Sunday afternoon?
Because across the wall, there was a church.
Okay.
What we call a proper Pentecostal church.
Okay.
It may be even close to the letter that Museveni wrote to a particular church in Uganda. So these guys would have like activities on the entire of Saturday, like from 7. Like you're woken up at 7. Somebody's like, "Hallelujah, mic testing 1 2 1 2," and then they sing, and they're singing off key until like 11. Then there is a main event. Literally, your Saturday, you couldn't even sleep in. Okay. Then come Sunday, these guys would wake you early and bright.
What time was the first service?
They didn't start with the service. They would have the intercessory team come and start prayers.
Oh, wow.
So at 6:30, fresh and early, they're there, mic testing 1 2, and then they proceed to do prayers until 8:30. So those days I would go out, and then I'll come in maybe on Saturday. Yeah, You've gone in on Friday, you've danced yourself tired. Then you're coming to the house at about 3 4 a.m., sometimes 5 a.m., those days. Yeah. But just as you're putting your head down, it's 1 2 1 2 1 2, mic testing 1 2.
You're the guys they're praying for. You guys who have been out all night. You might as well just go and join them at that point.
So at one point, and I liked the house. It was spacious. It was located at a good place. Well, other than the church being across the wall. Anyway, but I suffered through it. So every time we say mic testing,
that's what
I remember those guys, and the trauma comes back. Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Full Scale Podcast. Today we are on episode 7. In this episode, we will be discussing the sort of helpers or entities or organizations that help startups grow and scale up, and so provide them with resources that are necessary for growth and scaling up. We will be discussing venture builders, accelerators, and incubators. My name is Timothy Mukiti. And I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Adrian Twatwa. How are you doing, Adrian?
I'm well. I'm doing well, thanks, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Awesome. Episode 7.
Chinese collar. I like your shirt.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, guys should start sponsoring us.
Yeah,
we wear your logo here proudly.
Yeah, we are happy, Okay. So, Adrian, you want to start it up on, a brief definition of who incubators are, accelerators, and venture builders?
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just set the scene. And then as we go into a deep dive on each of them, I think there'll be a lot more clarity.
Yeah.
But just to give a general overview of what's an incubator, what's an accelerator, what's a venture builder. And as you'll talk to us about other names for venture builders.
Yeah.
I like the little analogies that are used, or like, so, seed funding. So you think of, someone's planting a seed that will grow and all this. So when I think of an incubator, I think of it similar to an incubator for like eggs, or for chicken or hens. So in that, a hen has eggs, then it broods, it sits on them and gives them warmth, turns them over, it provides all the conditions necessary for them to emerge and hatch as nice chicks. Right?
Yeah.
Similarly, an incubator basically does that for startups, right? It nurtures them, it gives them resources that they need, it gives them a lot of that early support that they need in order to become something that they want to become, right? So if you're a startup, especially before you have an MVP, right? You're just walking around, you have that idea, but you haven't tested it out, you haven't developed a product that you can actually put into the market. An incubator is a place that can give you those early structures that you need. So you can think in terms of working spaces, networks, support, a lot of things that we're going to delve into in order to incubate, so to speak, that idea and have it emerge as a beautiful idea that someone will go out and find a lot of value in.
Yes.
So that's how I think of an incubator. An accelerator, if you think about, okay, so your idea has hatched and now it's walking around, it has some legs and you're now trying to move it further along, right? So that it's now a fully blown idea that can get a lot of capture a lot of the market, create more revenue streams, scale as wide as possible. I feel like an accelerator is now the vehicle to help you get that done. Right. So they are a place, or usually like a short-term program where you can get all the things that you need to accelerate your growth. So again, mentorship, networking opportunities, but crucially for accelerators, there's also a funding piece in that they'll give you funding, of course, in exchange for ownership in your company, your startup, to then propel you forward and accelerate your growth. So that's sort of how I see an accelerator come in.
Or they could invite other financiers or funders to come listen to your pitches and your decks and what you have to offer, and then they can decide whether they will be funding you.
True. So usually you'll have like, let's say, 12-week program. And then at the end of that, you then have, let's say, a demo day where everyone comes with, so everyone who was in the accelerator, all the different startups, they then pitch to investors who have been brought in by the accelerator program. And then hopefully you like graduate into being funded, right? So you've gone through the accelerator and now you get funding and you go on your way. So I think of accelerators and incubators in a similar way because they tend to do similar things a bit differently, but in a similar way of going about their business. Venture builders, I think of a bit differently. They do a lot of those things, but I feel like their model is completely different in the sense that I think of a venture builder as someone who says, we have capital, we have networks. So this is an institution. We have capital, we have networks, we have office space, we have administrative resources, all of this. What we need is a startup to invest in. So what we do is we bring that startup or those startups into the fold. We bring them in along, bring them under our umbrella, and we provide all of those things to them to help them accelerate their growth and go through and do what it is that they are meant to do. So you can have multiple ventures, all of them, they can start from scratch or they can be somewhere along their path. And then they're brought into the venture studio or the venture builder to then go on and do the work that they're supposed to do. So there are elements there that sort of align with what accelerators do and incubators do. But I think of a venture builder more as we are a studio for just growing startups, and we're going to nurture them and we're going to build them from beginning to end. If we find an idea that doesn't work, we're going to abandon that idea and we're going to go get another idea and we're going to test it. I feel like it's a lot more cutthroat, not in a bad way, but it's more so we're about the business of making startups succeed. And that's how we're going to do it. Just that now we're doing it in-house. It's our startups. We're not doing it just for any startup that we find on the street. So, I mean, we'll get into this later, but I think more venture builders are the ones who find the startups as opposed to the startups going out and applying like for an accelerator program or an incubator.
Indeed.
Do you want to add to that, or do you think we should just go dive right into the deep dive?
Agreed. Venture builders will either come up with their own startup ideas and fund them and provide the resources that are necessary to, set this startup going and make it ready. Or alternatively, they could go out there and find ideas that interest them. So in return for equity, it could be preferred equity, or it could be common stock or common shareholding, ordinary shares. They go ahead and provide all the necessary resources that are required for this startup to run, put up structures, and then in return they get equity.
True.
So it's an interesting model.
Yeah, they can also start these in-house and then bring a founder on board, right? So it's like we have this idea.
They can hire.
And we basically hire you. Like, you're a founder, you're the type of person who can run this thing and take it on. Come on board and do this with us in-house. So it's a bit of a different structure, but the end goal is the same, right? To get this idea from incubation to accelerate it, to give it all the things that it needs in order to then make a successful exit or to grow it to as big as it can get.
Yes. Agreed. And awesome. the name for venture builders really, as venture builders has had multiple names.
Yeah. What other names do they
some
go
of the
by?
times it's considered venture studios, startup studios, or startup factories.
Okay.
Those are some of the common names that you might find for venture builders.
Yeah.
But all of them doing largely the same thing, really.
Yeah, and the connotation there, builder, factory, it's all like we're putting all this work in, and we're manufacturing these things, and we're putting all the resources we need to in order to make them great.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I think about them. Okay. So maybe now we can do a bit of a deep dive. We want to go through each of these. So incubators, accelerators, venture builders, /studios, /factories.
Yeah.
And talk about what is their role, like on a day-to-day basis, what is it that they do? And then we can speak to some benefits. What are the benefits to the to the company, to the startup, if you are participating in an accelerator program, or if you're part of an incubator? What are the benefits that you get through that? As well as on the flip side, if you are an accelerator or a venture builder, what are the benefits that you get from this? Because there must be something in it for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. So I think that's sort of how we're going to break it down. That's the structure for the deep dive.
Yeah.
So maybe you can get us started on incubators, Tim. What role do they play?
So some of the roles that incubators play is that they provide the startups with resources. This could be an office space, administrative support, or it could be, access to high-speed internet.
Yeah.
Especially if your startup deals with perhaps, let's say, e-commerce, you need high-speed internet to do that.
Yeah, that's
so crucial. Yeah. And these resources would be costly otherwise, for the startup to be undertaking for itself. For example, if it's taking on administrative costs, such as hiring office managers, hiring maybe HR personnel, maybe, or even costs that would otherwise be taken up by the startup. The incubator would be able to provide these resources to the startup to enable their journey to enable that journey to be easier and perhaps better.
And I think that's a great point, because at that stage, it's so early in the life of a startup that we've just come up with an idea, we're testing it, we need to create that prototype. Thinking about going and getting an office space might not be the top, the thing that's top of mind for someone at that stage. You just want to get the idea in motion. So I think that's a great one.
Yeah. Equally, there is the benefit that you'd get from mentorship. The incubator could provide startups with mentorship, trying to help you through the startup journey.
Yeah.
I mean, being a founder and having a successful startup, or not, let's not even say a successful startup, being a founder and having a great idea is not the only indicator of chances to succeed. The journey can be tough.
Yeah.
Can involve a lot of things. And if you can have somebody to hold your hand or guide you in the right direction, or you can bounce off ideas, or even an environment where you can ask a few questions, it makes your journey so much easier, and you're able to move quicker, or maybe you can even improve your chances of success by being in an incubation program.
I 100% agree with that. Also, having advisors and mentors early on, I think is key, especially if they've worked with other startups and seen how they've done it. They can help you avoid making the same mistakes.
Exactly.
But also I see a lot of times on pitch decks, so you're pitching as a startup to a VC or someone else for funding. There's always a slide with like, okay, who are we, like the team, the co-founders, etc. But then there's advisors and mentors and other people that usually feature on there, which is, if I'm investing in a startup and I see that one of their advisors is, I don't know, we keep saying Elon Musk's name on this podcast, but not to sort of
we hope we don't get us
or his politics or anything,
or we don't get a strongly worded letter from Elon Musk's lawyers.
But if we see him as an advisor to this company, this startup, I'll be very intrigued. Right? It's like, okay, this is interesting. The personnel that you have advising you and mentoring you through what you're doing. So just another one to flag. But I think that's a really cool point and a key one.
Yes. Equally, there is the networking channels, opportunity to network. This could be chances to network with other founders, exchange ideas, sort of encourage each other through the journey, or let each other know the challenges that they are likely to encounter. I mean, you just basically have an environment where you encounter other entrepreneurs and founders, and it's a good network.
Yeah.
Equally, it could provide you with a network of funders. People can provide capital to your startup depending on your capital needs at that stage. It could also be a network that provides you with a network of clients. Maybe some of them are shared, or you could find a way of reaching the market or identifying specific
or even
clients.
Talent
or
right?
Talent, exactly.
So maybe you can go to the incubator and they can say, well, actually we know the best engineers for this type of product that you're looking to build, and we have them in-house, or we can put you in touch with them.
Exactly.
The network effects are great there, right? Because they've already seen so many startups, so they can always point you in the right direction. Okay.
So some of these benefits are largely non-equity, but which are extremely crucial to the success of this startup, such as the mentorship that we have mentioned, access to a network of people who are participating in the startup industry or startup space, even clients or talent, like you've mentioned. Awesome.
So it sounds like everything you need at that stage so early on to be successful. So you can really focus on the product. If it's that you need people to build it, you need people to advise you, you need resources, administrative resources. I can imagine there's incubators that provide, say, your HR function or your accounting function. So you don't have to worry about doing the books, because I am not smart about books. So I can have the incubator give me a third party finance person to help me with my accounts. All sorts of sort of benefits that you get from just being in the incubator program or being part of the incubator. So I think a lot of what you've spoken about, the role of the incubator, also really aligns with the benefits to the startup, right? Because the things that they're doing one-to-one benefit you. If they're providing networks, you're gaining networks. If they're providing resources, you're gaining resources. So maybe I'll speak more to the benefits to the incubator, right? Because why are they doing this? Because I think a good point you mentioned was it's usually non-equity, in the sense that most of the time incubators don't take equity in your company. I mean, I think it's very early on. Chances of failure are still super high. Maybe it's not a good business model to be getting into every single every single startup that comes into the incubator. Maybe shouldn't be giving equity to the incubator program, but some of them do. I think there's at least some fraction. I don't know what the number would be for that, but at least there's some non-zero number of incubators out there that take equity in the startups that they work with. But I think largely it comes down to other benefits for the incubator. So for example, corporate and government sponsorships. So let's say you're the premier incubator in the country, in African country, let's say Uganda, right? You're the number one. Innovation Village is one that I usually see, and I think it's a good example in that you're widely known. Startups know that this is a place we can go and we can work and we can move our product forward. We'll get all the support we need. A place like that, the government, hopefully, and also corporate sponsors should see that and say, this is a cool place for talent, for innovation, for economic development. This is something we should target and resource as heavily as we can. So then the government can sponsor programs there, or can sponsor the incubator. Similarly, you could get corporate sponsors or non-profit organizations that come in and say...
And it sits well in terms of their social impact goals. Whatever they're trying to achieve in terms of being a good global citizen. To be able to sponsor such, because you're funding you're providing resources into the future success of commerce.
And I think we've discussed previously that these small businesses, startups as well, they are really the building blocks, right, of the economy. This is where most of the growth can come from, and does. For at least small SMEs, small medium enterprises, that's the engine of the economy in a large part for most of Africa. So finding businesses, especially startups within that ecosystem that have a lot of promise, and helping them grow, you're just helping the country grow in a way. So I think it's a really cool place to focus funding. Also, there's reputational and branding benefits, in the sense that, again, if we're the premier incubator in the country and the best startup on the continent came from us, right? That's a big deal. Everyone will know our name, our reputation will be really cool, our brand will be pretty strong. And then we can also attract even better startups that are also at that stage, instead of them going somewhere else. Also professional networks, I think, for the incubator itself, because the networks are good for the startups, but also as an incubator, if I'm the head of the incubator, my network is going to be massive, right?
Exactly.
Because I've interacted with so many people building so many cool things. I've met their advisors. I've met the people that are funding them. We've met government and corporate sponsors. So I think the network there that you can develop is just massive. And of course, the knock on the second order effect or benefit is the social and economic development, right? So I think even as an incubator, you may not be getting direct money from these startups or equity in these startups, but seeing them go out and change the world, I think is a benefit to them as well. It's like, I would love to be able to say that I helped build I supported the company that's now changing lives across the continent. I'd love to be part of that journey. So I think that's another benefit to them. I mean, I'm sure there are other non-monetary and, other more intangible benefits that they receive as incubators. But I think those are it's a pretty good summation of at least why you would want to be an incubator and why you would want to work in that space.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe give us some examples? Because we've said so much about incubators. Could you tell people some, maybe globally or locally, what some of incubators are that you've seen?
Well, one good example is Y Combinator.
Yeah. Oh, that's incubator, right?
The incubator. but it equally ranks as within the accelerator spaces. Yeah, but it's one of the well-known global one that has had significant impact in the startup space.
Correct. And many huge companies have come out of them. But I think just on that point, we do find that a lot of the time, and especially we encountered this a lot in the research for this episode.
Yeah.
An incubator is not just an incubator. It might also be an accelerator.
Exactly.
Or it might not just be those. It might also have a venture builder arm that it's creating. So
exactly.
the names that you end up seeing on different lists, there will be a lot of intersection if you think of it as a Venn diagram. There's many that overlap. But the core principles and tenets are there, right? So we'll try and limit it to those that fall neatly in those buckets. But you'll find that there's a lot of overlap in these organizations.
Yeah, and if you want to read some more, you can check out their website, Y Combinator. They usually have a lot of exciting resources, including the safes that we have discussed.
Yeah, right.
The template
one of the best things that ever came out of Y Combinator.
Exactly. Yeah, you can check out their website and see some more. And And there's a growing number of also incubators in Africa as well, the East African market. One example is MEST in MEST Africa in Ghana, and we have NAILAB in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are some of the examples. And again, you could check their website and try see what they do and what the resources. If you're a startup, how perhaps you could benefit from this sort of stuff.
And they go by many names. They'll have hub usually in them.
Exactly.
Something hub or
lab.
Yeah, lab or ecosystem, something like that, or like innovation or startup ecosystem hub, things like that. That's usually the names that they go by. Okay. Yeah. So
perhaps you could mention something that would be a good distinguisher, because we're moving to accelerators, right?
Okay.
But before we go to that, maybe you could mention the fact that there's hardly one of the advantages of an incubator is that there's hardly a time frame. Where you're limited to, you're going to be with us for 3 weeks, or you're going to be with us for 12 weeks. After that, you're on your own. You get to have more time to perhaps build on your idea, more access to the resources as you grow, unlike accelerators, right?
Yeah, I think that's well put in that an incubator, I don't think is necessarily time bound. I mean, at some point you should graduate, so to speak.
Yeah, you can be under incubation eternally.
Yeah. So if Uber started in an incubator, hopefully Uber is not still in an incubator by now, right? Like you need to use that support and use it to grow into a point where now you don't need those structures, or you can create your own, right? But generally incubators don't seem to be time bound. So you can come in, stay as long as you want to, just focus on building your company and developing that growth and that MVP, the scale, whatever it is you need to get to the point where now you can go out. And even then they might still support you. You can still tap into those networks, mentorship, all of that, but you should be able to move on and graduate. Accelerators, or more specifically, accelerator programs, right? They seem to be more of a program. So you'll see an email comes, it's like,
basically you're being accelerated. There's an end to the acceleration. Even when you step on the gas of your car, you don't do it for eternity.
In Nairobi, I see some guys who don't think there's an end to their acceleration.
Okay.
Here is a program specifically if you want to develop technology solutions in the agricultural space. So ag tech. There's an accelerator program for people like you. If you already have an ag tech MVP, usually, let's say you already have an MVP, apply. If we accept you, we'll put you through this 10, 12-week program and we'll accelerate your growth so that by the end of the 12-week program, you're now ready. You're investor ready. You're ready to go out and make a change and make a difference, raise funds, and really continue the scaling of your company, of your startup. So I think that's a big distinction between the two, as well as maybe the equity versus non-equity thing. Accelerators, I think, tend to want more equity. I think also
invariably they'll take equity.
Exactly. Also, I think because of the fact that we've accepted you knowing you have an MVP, knowing that we're going to put you through this rigorous program so that at the end of it, you receive funding and go on. I would think we would want to be part of that journey now. If you're truly worth funding and people are looking at you, we should also be aligned and sort of get a stake in that going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, do you want to talk more about the role of accelerators? And I mean, I'm sure the benefits to the startups are also going to come out in that discussion, but we can touch on those as we go.
Yeah. So one of how accelerators do their program is mostly that they will take in startups and they take them through a structured program.
Okay.
So this, like we've mentioned, this program could run for about 3 months to 6 months, which tends to be the more popular period for the period when accelerators take in startups. If you look at it in terms of weeks, anyway, it could be around 12 weeks, or even more, 12 weeks to 24 weeks, depending. So it's a structured program, literally, but it's very intensive,
and fast-paced.
So it's like doing you're in a crash course on how to be able to turn around your startup, to give you the tools that are necessary to equip you to be able to grow your startup. So there's one of the roles, of course, is they provide intensive mentorship. Okay. Within that period, you get to be mentored intensely. You're provided with feedback from experienced entrepreneurs or people who understand what they're doing, and they work very closely with you to fine-tune your business idea or what you're planning to offer to the market. Gotcha. And how best you're going to be able to reach out to the market. Then there's equally opportunities for you to have demo days to showcase your idea, the concept that you have, to pitch to particular, either to within the networks that the accelerators have, or even to investors who they can invite, and mostly towards graduation of the startups that have been going through the program. They can invite investors to listen to your specific ideas, and if some of the investors find your ideas to be exciting, then they can invest in your ideas. Yeah,
it sounds like a lot more intense. Even the mentorship is more intense. Of course. The pace is more intense.
Assuming you're doing this for 12 weeks.
Yeah, right.
That's a lot.
Yeah, because you need to get through this and be done, right?
Exactly. And you're equally going through rapid iteration. Throughout that period, you're tweaking, adjusting, getting feedback, asking questions. There's a lot of things that you're doing. That's actually why it's called an accelerator, because you're moving fast.
There's a pace to it.
There's a pace to it that requires that you show up strong. And
I think it's also cool that you're also in a peer group or in a cohort, right? So it's not just me and Tim with our fitness app trying to go through the accelerator. There's also someone else with their health app, or someone else with their agriculture technology service that they're trying to put out. So all of us are working together and rubbing shoulders and learning and seeing, oh wow, that thing didn't work for them. We have something pretty similar. Maybe we can also learn from that. So it's like the effect of having all these people helping you intensively, but then also being next to other people that are going through the same thing. It's like when you're in school, right?
Exactly.
It's easier to also learn from other people's mistakes as you're all going through it.
Exactly. You can see a guy who read throughout the night and how they performed in the exam, and you're like, next time I'm probably going to sleep in for some time. The fact that all of you are there because it's cohorts,
Yeah.
There's a couple of startups that are within under the acceleration. You're all perhaps learning from each other, and you're seeing how best to improve on your ideas, which I think is an exciting thing for a startup. It's intense, but there's probably a lot of value that you would get from it as a startup, such as alumni networks. Yeah.
Right. Even after you graduate. And it's always cool to go in it with someone else, right? So if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So I think it also has those effects. There's so many people all geared towards your success and you're all going at it together. So I think you can really go far. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to discuss something about the benefits some of the benefits?
So I mean, the benefits to the startups, I think we've mostly covered. And again, they're very similar to the incubator ones, except in my mind, I feel like an incubator, it's like nice lighting, everyone is happy, everyone is, sitting around
perhaps
talking.
Not.
I mean, I don't know. This is my idealistic view of it in my mind.
Incubator,
Whereas in an accelerator, I feel like we're all in a classroom. Everyone needs to get this done. If you don't, you're not going to get the funding you need.
Exactly.
And it's like we need to move really quickly. But all of the benefits that we've discussed, I think, still apply just as they do in the incubator model, in the accelerator model, to the startups. But similarly for the accelerator, right? Why are the accelerators doing this? So I think the biggest benefit here is the equity piece, in that you're doing this because you've set out an application. Startups have applied to your accelerator program. You've sifted through them and found, like, let's say the best 10. Those are the ones that are now in this cohort. You've focused all of your resources, time, networks in making these people successful. If you can then have 6 of those or 5 of those be really successful and you've invested in them as well. Yeah. It's almost like a VC model, kind of, but not quite. It's very early, but it's a lot more hands-on work. And then they can go off those companies and do really well. It's such a good investment of your time, resources, and money. So I think that, as accelerators, so I think that's the biggest piece for them. But then also with the program application, usually there's a fee. So you might have some program fees. I mean, maybe it might be one where it's free to apply, but once you get in, you actually have to pay some sort of tuition or something. But there are usually some sort of fees that are part of the accelerator program. So there is some monetary benefit for the accelerator in that sense. The accelerator could also invest in your startup, and then your startup does really well, and then they'll also follow on later on down the line. They might say, or maybe they didn't invest to begin with because they didn't see it, but now that you've gone off and done really well, they now want to invest in you. So they have that network, that connection with you, that they could invest or follow on down the line. But then I think all the other benefits are sort of the same as the incubators, right? If this is a great accelerator program, we might get corporate or government sponsorship. Our brand name is huge. Our recognition in the market, the networks that we develop, etc. So I think that's all pretty similar to the benefits that you would get if you were just doing an incubator as opposed to an accelerator. But then you also see why, if you're an incubator, you might also just as well do the acceleration and just add a program for the people in your cohort that you think are the most likely to succeed, and then focus all your energy and efforts in accelerating their growth after they've come out of the incubation. So I think that's sort of the benefits. Do you want to talk about examples, just so you can ground people in, like, what are names that they might have heard and be like, oh, well, that's an accelerator?
Yeah. So, well, one of the name, of course, is, like we mentioned, is Y Combinator. Is one of the well-known.
Again, the name comes up again.
It comes up both under incubators and accelerators. It's one of the well-known accelerator. We have 500 startups in the US as well, which is quite well known. And Techstars.
Okay.
Bring it home, close home. East Africa, we have Founders Factory.
Founders Factory Africa is also going to come up again in the venture builders conversation. But I mean, Techstars, Seedstars, again, you'll find a lot of incubation hubs that then just have an accelerator program. Here in Kenya, I think we have like CC Hub. There's another one. There's one also for legal tech specifically. I think it's like Legal Tech Hub or something like that. We can find one of these and put them in the description in case folks are interested. Sure. But so those are incubators and accelerators. I think those are pretty well covered now. Do we want to go into venture builders / venture studios / venture factories?
Yes. We could go to venture builders. Which operate a model through a model, and basically they're a more recent addition to this kind of model compared to accelerators. and incubators.
Yeah, because they've been around for a while, right?
Yeah,
Incubators and
accelerators.
Exactly.
But it's a more now perhaps refined approach to it, which sort of suits, on average, the journey of growing a company or a startup would take about a decade.
Okay.
When you start from the moment you start from the idea to, if you want to exit, and we are assuming that your goal is to scale up rapidly.
Yeah.
You plan to scale up rapidly
and go full scale.
Exactly, full scale. But there are some people who would be more interested in working on an idea that has potential for growth, but you want to do the work at the early stages. Develop the idea, develop an MVP, do alpha testing and beta testing, put the product out in the market, scale it up a little rapidly. And most of these times you're funding from your own balance sheet. For venture builders, you're funding that idea from your balance sheet. And then at a future date, when it has succeeded and when it has grown, then you can either choose to stay with it and grow with it. But most of the people who operate with that system are more interested in dealing with ideas around that space.
Okay.
So once you've gotten, this is a vehicle, you've set it up, it's ready to go, you exit, you perhaps sell to a strategic buyer or get VC funds to invest in it, and you exit.
Because probably also you can only do that with so many companies, right?
Exactly. And usually, unlike incubators or accelerators, and I think you mentioned that initially, where you would be investing, you'll be making an application to perhaps be part of the acceleration program or to be part of this incubator. Venture builders, on the other side, they will be the one more likely to choose your idea if they are going to be involved in your idea as a founder. That is on the side where they either invest in an idea that has been founded by a different founder. Other option is that they could come up with their own idea altogether, in-house, and mostly the sectors that they look at are sectors that are less asset intensive, that require less asset, but they thrive a lot on brilliant ideas. You have a brilliant idea, but you don't require a lot of assets to get it moving. Such sectors could be agriculture, healthcare. I mean, you could have a splendid idea on how to make sure you're doing good irrigation for whatever area of land you're tilling or taking care of. But you don't need a lot of equipment to do that.
So that's not the technology. Exactly. Someone else is handling the equipment, but you're bringing, let's say, the technology solution to do it.
Exactly. Or you don't even need much technology or equipment for that matter to be able to successfully do that.
Got you.
So they will undertake this idea, take care of it, build it, put structures. Now, ordinarily, venture builders usually have a team for the startup that they're dealing with, the ideas that they're funding or the ideas that they're involved in.
Okay.
So a good example is you could have a legal team within the venture builder. You could have HR professionals. You could have finance professionals. You could have even engineers if you need to build.
The thing. Okay.
So for every startup that you're involved in, this startup does not even need to hire HR, does not need to hire an auditor or a finance guy, or auditor you will need to, but or an internal finance guy. That does not need to hire a legal team. So basically, they're being provided with the resources, and the resources that they need, all that is required is for the idea to get fit, to be strong, and to grow rapidly.
Awesome.
So that's one of the identifiers of venture builders or venture studios
or factories,
yes.
Startup factories. It strikes me as and tell me if this sounds right to you. It sounds to me like there was a VC fund somewhere one day, and they kept investing in these startups that had come through accelerators and incubators, and maybe they were successful to some degree. But they said, why are we waiting until they've gone through these other programs?
Yes.
Let's just do this ourselves. Let's build this thing from the beginning up until where we can now exit it. So let's set up all these functions internally to support a startup. And now let's just bring ideas and let's be a real factory for ideas. So person number one, what's your idea? Okay, let's test it. If it doesn't work, we throw it out. Next idea.
Exactly.
Until they get to the one that really works. There's product market fit. They've built it out. They're testing it. The market is reacting well to it. There's demand. And then they say, this is the one. Let's stick with this one.
Exactly.
But again, we can rinse and repeat for the next idea and just keep on. It's like a conveyor belt.
Exactly. And I like that. Use the example of a conveyor belt because that could perhaps lend meaning to the term factory.
Factory, right?
Exactly. It's like a conveyor belt. We have done this so many times that we are very good at doing it. Because with time, some of the structures that are required for a startup to succeed start to get obvious.
Yeah.
Is your cap table clear? Is your MVP properly tested? Because when you're a founder just going by yourself, you could perhaps not invest enough time in testing your idea.
Yeah.
Or if you're testing it, you have not done the rest. You have not followed the checklist. The checklist is do A, B, C, D. Ensure these are the results you're getting. If you're not getting these results, go back and work on it a bit. But sometimes you could skip steps.
Yeah.
And then once you have launched the market, that's when you're realizing that the time you spent testing was not adequate, and now you have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
You would rather be clear that if we have done all these steps, odds are we are likely to succeed.
And the only reason you'd have that checklist is if you like the venture builders or startup factories, you've done this so many times.
Over and over, you know what works and you know what doesn't work. And then you are less attached to the ideas. Because you are now taking ownership of the ideas, you're less attached to them. If one idea doesn't work, you let go of it so fast, you don't waste resources. Because sometimes in a startup, you could spend a lot of money or a lot of capital in an idea that is actually ultimately going to fail.
Yeah.
It can happen.
Yeah.
So, but with experience of venture builders, ideally, because you have a lot of experience in doing this, odds are that you're going to create better chances of success.
Yes.
Because if the idea is not working, or from the moment you do your alpha testing, you're realizing there are serious gaps with this idea, you just drop it. Yeah. You don't need to insist on going to even beta testing and then you go to the market and the market doesn't appreciate it. And even if you get to the market stage and the market does not appreciate it the way you thought you could appreciate it, it's very easy for a venture builder to cut their losses and move on to other things.
And I want you mentioned chances of success are higher, and I want you to just give us a little bit more on that in terms of stats, in terms of how much more successful are startups that perhaps go through venture builder or startup factories compared to others. But before we get to that, just two things. One, I think you're spot on in terms of they're more, what I'd say is maybe dispassionate or less attached to ideas when it comes to a venture builder, in the sense that we're seeing so many ideas. So if we see that this is not a good idea, we're not going to stick with it and go through with it until, the seed and post-seed stage. We're not really going to do all that effort because what's an idea? There's so many other ideas here that we could focus on. Compared to if you are the individual founder and this is your baby and this is your idea, it might be hard for you to say this is actually not a good thing. Exactly. And maybe let me try something else.
Exactly. You might be... That might be your blind spot.
Yeah.
Or the fact that it's so attached to many hours that you've put in, you're not willing to see that chances are high it may not succeed. So you want to still pursue it, insist until you cannot insist anymore.
Correct. The analogy I've seen a lot is someone walking up a mountain.
Yeah.
And it's only when they get halfway up the mountain that they realize, actually, this is the wrong mountain. I didn't mean to climb this one. So then, I feel like you're saying that reaction is from a place of experience.
I can tell because I hike a lot, so I can. It requires a lot of investment.
So now, right? Imagine you're halfway up the mountain. So
no, the wrong one.
Do you just say, let me just continue because I'm already here, or do you take, have that great resilience to say, let me go back down and let me climb the right one. Exactly. So it's a skill, I think, as well. But also the second point being risk diversification, I think. So we have so many different ideas in-house that we're developing at a time. If one of them is bad, fine. We still have all these other ones that we're going to try out. So from that perspective of venture build, I feel like the risk is lower. from their perspective, because they have other eggs to look at and to check up on that might hatch, as opposed to this one that they know is not going to hatch.
Yeah, which really almost borrows to the concept of venture capital.
Right.
The fact that you're investing...
Which is why I think it was a VC fund that said, we're tired.
Yeah, perhaps it came from somebody who thought that they can benefit more from helping the startups grow by themselves, rather than getting into startups that already have maybe equity already given to accelerators. They have given a bit of equity to parties that have been supporting them with capital initially. So you perhaps, if you start at the very early stage, and with time in playing with that space, you start to know what good ideas look like.
Right.
Yeah, you start to get a good sense.
It's probably like a sixth sense. Like, this is a bad idea.
Exactly. You can start to know. And when you're spreading your risk, like you've mentioned, you invest in like 10 of them. Perhaps 3 that succeed, or whatever number that succeeds, could perhaps do you very well. And I'd mentioned, and we'll go to the statistics. Actually,
I think before you get to that, I wanted to ask you in terms of the shareholding. So if I have an idea in house as a startup, as a venture builder or startup factory, let's say it's not an in-house one developed. Let's say I've found you as a founder. And I think your idea is really neat. And I want you to come be part of our venture builder. Let's develop your idea in-house. I'll give you all the structures you need, all the support. How much in terms of equity do you think I will be asking for? Or do you usually venture builders look to... Because I think it's a bit more compared to, say, an accelerator, right? Which is very early stage. All we've done is given you this 12-week program, as opposed to I am basically giving you everything and you're going to live under my roof and I'm going to make you a success.
We had an individual who mentioned that he would want to go for about 30%.
Correct.
And we also had a debate whether you would want to perhaps go closer to 50%.
Yeah, which we have seen that a lot of them actually do want almost half.
You want almost half because really you're as a founder, you'd rather have a half of something successful than 100% of nothing.
Right.
Exactly. So you'd rather have 50% of something that is going to work, or as opposed to having 100% of something that you will lose the entire of it. So,
but I mean, hindsight is 20/20, right? If it has already succeeded, it's easy to look back and say yes. But maybe at the time when you're making that decision, you're thinking, this person wants 50% of my business, and I know I can grow this business and make it amazing on my own. Or that's what you think anyway, right? Yeah. So it's only later on that maybe it doesn't succeed, or maybe
but tell you what, given that more occasion than not, venture builders will look for you. I think that since they have a sense that it's a good idea, chances are high they're willing to negotiate well. Come to a good understanding. I mean, sometimes you find founders may not be willing to give much. But also as a venture builder, you have to do your math. If this is likely to succeed, what will I be happy to?
I think it's important if both parties are well represented.
Exactly.
So make sure you get a lawyer. This is not legal advice.
Yes.
Talk to your legal advisor so that you get the right terms, even if you're going with a venture builder or going it alone. Make sure that you're well informed before you make those decisions.
Exactly.
So maybe you can go into some of those stats.
Yes.
And then some examples as well for venture builders locally and maybe globally.
So according to the Global Startup Studio Network, a 2019 report, 84% of startups coming out of studios go ahead to raise seed round.
Okay. That's
and
pretty
of
good.
Those,
84.
Exactly. 84 that's A. That's an A student, really.
Well, I mean, that's a B.
Well,
B-ish, B minus-ish.
Well,
but it's pretty good.
Well,
84%.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good success. And out of those startups that make it to the seed round, 72% make it to Series A. That's serious success. 72% again make it to Series A. And as we mentioned,
Series A is a big one. We said median for Africa last year, Series A was in the millions of dollars.
And this is compared to 42% of ordinary startups that would make it to Series A.
Got you.
Yeah.
So if I don't go with a venture, venture builder,
if you do venture builders route,
chances of getting to Series A are.
I'm just giving data, 30, not campaigning
higher.
For anything.
Yeah,
we're just giving data. Yeah. But it can show you sort of how that benefiting from the experience of having invested in this space over and over, having a team that understands this space through and through, can sniff good ideas, or even identifying founders, because you can come up with your own ideas and set up founders. Like, these are the founders. So yeah.
Right. They're probably also better at choosing founders for ideas, because you might be the founder with an idea, but maybe you're not the right founder for that idea, if that makes sense. So maybe if they have the idea in-house, they'll say, let's go out and find the right founder to help us see this vision through.
The way we're using the term founder, I think we would like to refer our listeners or our audience to an episode where we discussed founders. That was episode 2.
Correct.
Where we defined founders, and we explained that a founder does not have to be necessarily the person who came up with the idea.
Yep.
It can also be a person who comes in at the very early stages of the startup, before you've developed an MVP, or even you've turned revenue positive.
Yeah.
So when you say the venture builder can get a founder, I think some people may be starting to confuse, but this guy has not come up with the idea. Why is he a founder? Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a technical meaning to the term. So on the higher side, startups that come from venture studios have a 30% higher success rate than traditional startups.
Wow.
And this is still the Global Startup Studio Network report of 2019.
That's significant, because it's like almost a third better chance
of success.
Succeeding.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which has, it could be a discussion for when we have a guest in future to discuss this specific thing, but maybe it could be something that works better for African continent. Venture building.
Correct.
Perhaps it could be. Yeah.
We have mentioned that getting ideas, concepts, practices from other jurisdictions and importing them wholesale into Africa sometimes does not work. So even perhaps the VC model, the classic Silicon Valley VC model, maybe it's not working as well as it could. So perhaps more venture builders, more startup studios, that's something that perhaps could work better on the continent. More hands-on approach, quickly testing these ideas, being dispassionate about them, letting the ones that are not good, let them die, and focus on the ones that are actually promising, picking the right founders for the right ideas, and working through those steps quickly and iterating and learning from the process. Maybe that might be a model that's better suited. I think the numbers will have to bear that out. We'll have to see over time, how are those types of ventures or those types of studios working in the local context compared to regular VCs or other startups that have gone through just an incubator or an accelerator, or have not gone through that at all.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think.
Do you have an example?
No. What I wanted to mention was the fact that we mentioned that the venture builders sometimes or more times than not invest from their balance sheet, but there are occasions where they fundraise actually.
Okay.
You can fundraise for venture builders and venture studios. Yeah. So good examples include Atomic in the US.
Okay.
Idea Lab, the US as well.
Okay.
We have Founders Factory Africa from South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are, I guess, a good examples.
And I think Founders Factory Africa is probably the most well-known one on the continent so far. So I guess just to cap the conversation, we've talked about incubators, accelerators, venture builders, what they are, what role they play, benefits both sides, and some examples locally and abroad. What then, Tim, if you're a startup and you're looking at these 3 options, what's best for you as a startup? Or how do you evaluate whether you should look for an incubator or an accelerator? Or, we've discussed that venture builders may find you more often than you find them. But how do you evaluate which of those is the right fit for you?
Well, yes, the right fit for you depends on a couple of factors.
It depends.
It's a legal, but there's just a few factors. So one of them is your specific needs as a startup, as well as the stage of development and the strategic goals. You recall initially when we started discussing this, you mentioned in your description of and definition of what incubators, accelerators, and venture builders, you mentioned something to do with stage. When you're most likely going to have an MVP by the time you're joining an accelerator, you're most likely going to go to an incubator when you're at a very early stage. And so that sort of makes your choice depending on, first of all, stage of development, strategic goals. Some of the strategic goals is, if you want rapid growth and access to a network of investors, you perhaps would go for an accelerator because it's rapid. You're being pushed through the system pretty quick. You're learning a lot and you're developing a network of investors. However, if you're looking for very comprehensive support, from ideation to launch, to market fit and all that, you might be more happy to join, to be part of a venture studio or venture builder, because you'll be provided with a lot of support in terms of resources, and they get equity, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's a good point.
So your interests are tied together.
Yeah.
Your interests are tied together. Your success as a startup is tied to their success, and the amount of investment in terms of support will be significant.
Awesome. So I think you've
Yeah.
you've really tied it together quite well in that. So ideation, nurturing, general, coming up with the MVP, you probably want an incubator.
Yes.
Right? Have that hen sit on you
Exactly.
and make you be what you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
If you're trying to speed run and get this thing done, you have it. You need to get traction. You need to develop and scale and move forward and get networks and funding. Probably you want an accelerator.
Yes.
So you want to go through all of it
Mhm.
and even have other benefits. And if you want the full scale of
Hands-on
everything,
support.
yeah, probably you're more better suited for a startup factory or venture builder.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that wraps the conversation. If there's anything that's not really come out clearly in that discussion, if there are threads you wanted us to pull on that we didn't, just leave a comment, ask us questions. We can expound on more of these concepts in future episodes. But I would like to get some wisdom from the course from Tim. So, wisdom from the course. The thing comes on the screen.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Do you have some wisdom from the course for us today, Tim?
I do have some wisdom from the course. And today's wisdom from the course is basically around focus and taking your time.
Okay.
So a successful shot in golf has two components. I could split it to two components.
Okay.
What's happening within you as the golfer, and what's happening once the ball has left the club, you've had a good contact, the ball has flown. Okay. Because you could have a good shot that ends up in the bunker.
Okay.
Or you could have a good shot, very good shot, that ends up in the bushes.
Okay.
You can equally have
Yeah.
a very well hit ball that ends up in the water.
Yes.
Maybe you didn't choose the right club, so the distance wasn't right and the ball falls short, gets into the water, or the club was too long and the ball flew over where you wanted it to go and it's just out of bounds or has equally gone into hazards.
So to clarify, when you say it's a good shot, much as it went into a hazard in the water, it's good in terms of the shape of the shot, like the sound, like a good shot when you hear it, when you see it, it's like, wow, what a shot.
Mm-hmm.
But actually,
the outcome of it,
okay.
yeah. So there is both what is happening within you as you're swinging, because now that's part one, and then part two is after the ball takes off. Where will it land? Will it go where you wanted it to go?
Okay.
Now, all these factors with a bit of time, but one thing I've learned with golf is that time does not really help if you're not doing the right things. If you're not swinging right, it doesn't matter how many times you swing. The results will always be bad.
Okay.
If you do not have good address of direction or understanding of the right club, you don't know your consistency. If your 7-iron today gives you 150 yards, tomorrow it's 190 yards. So every time you pick it, you're not sure what's going to happen. Yeah. That's going to not help you very much. So I have learned that most times when you get good results in a shot, is when you relax and take your time. Golf is a sport that is usually very timed. Like there's usually pressure perhaps when you're playing from people behind you, or there's also the fact that, you want to move fast, or maybe somebody within your team is moving fast. But any time a golfer forgets that to take the time and chill, you end up taking more time playing that hole because perhaps your ball went into the hazards, it went into the bushes, so you spend like 3 minutes looking for it, or maybe you got a bad shot, therefore you have to do more shots. So with one thing I have learned is that you need to relax and take your time. Not take too much time, not overthink the shot. But the thing is, relax, understand what you're trying to achieve, get your frame and your body ready to do it, and have your mind equally aligned to what you're trying to achieve. Because you will never get another chance to hit that particular shot again. So you might as well just focus and take your time. And it goes to how, and when you do that, most times you get a good result, a decent result. And even if it's not a good result, it's a result you can live with, because you can go and find a way to correct it or learn what went wrong. Either you didn't address the ball properly, therefore the swing wasn't right, or you didn't use the right club, or you didn't align yourself properly and it flew well, but then ended up in the water. So you are not happy. It aligns with how sometimes we do life. Sometimes we do things more in a rush without having taken time. And we get results that we are not happy with. And the thing is, we never really, as long as the pressure to the things you're doing is coming from external sources, not from internal, chances are high that you're not going to do well. And to tie it up, there's an example there's an analogy I learned a while ago, that when an egg cracks from inside, life begins. That is, the chick is the one that is trying to crack it. But whenever an egg cracks from outside, life ends.
Wow.
So internal pressure pushing you to do well versus external pressure pushing you. Chances of one dying are usually high when pressure comes externally. And as a golfer, you have to learn to if there is any pressure, let that pressure be coming from within you. Not the fact that there's a guy standing behind me, there are people watching, and you don't take your time. So that's my lesson. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it also brings us full circle with the egg analogy.
Oh, the egg analogy.
For this episode, I wish we brought an egg. And just
we should have placed an egg. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Ask Steve to edit and put an egg.
Thank you very much for that wisdom.
Yeah.
Of course. Very, very, very well done.
Yeah. So what is the interesting thing you learned this week, Adrian?
So interesting thing of the week. So this week, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Arnold. Arnold is ecosystem manager at Norsken. If you're a startup and you're looking for the type of support that we've been talking about in this episode, networks, office space, resources, mentorship, advisory, all of that, they have it within Norsken House in Kigali. So I was talking to Arnold, just catching up. He's a friend of the podcast. And he said something that reminded me of a really cool lesson, which is, he was talking about a founder that he was talking to. And this founder is one of the smartest people that he's ever met. You know those people who, when you talk to them, you feel like you never
There's
studied.
A wow factor.
Yeah, like, you're like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
person is so impressive. They know what they're talking about. They're super impressive. They have everything that you can imagine in terms of knowing whatever expertise it is that they're dealing with. They are the sharpest in the room. And he said every time he's in the room with this person, he feels really dumb just being in this room with the guy, right? But we talked about it in a positive way, in the sense that there's so much value in being the dumbest in the room, right? Yes. Which is just be the dumbest in the room. Yeah. When you're the dumbest in the room, there's so much to learn. There are all these people around you who have all these things that they've achieved, or all these things that you want or that you value that they have. And you can learn how to achieve those things. So it's not just in the sense of, intellect or whatever, but be the if wealth is what you want, be the least wealthy in the room, right? If you're the wealthiest in the room and you want to be wealthier, it's not helping you to be in a room where you're the wealthiest. If you want to be a startup that's super successful, be in rooms with other startups that are way more successful than you, right? So go to these incubation hubs, go to the accelerator programs, put yourself in the vicinity of success. And what you learn from that is enormous. So that's sort of the thing that he reminded me of, the value of just being the least of whatever it is in that room so that you can learn how to be the most.
That's wonderful, wonderful lesson.
Yeah, so
especially because it takes humility.
Yeah.
To accept that you're not that good and you should learn.
Yeah.
I think that's
100%.
Yeah.
Also, I guess the only thing I'd add to that is a lot of people will say, well, I want to be super wealthy, but I don't know any super wealthy people. How am I supposed to be in the room with them when I don't even know them? So one, I guess, is of course, put yourself out there, go to places you wouldn't usually be, wherever the wealthy people are. But also, if you don't have access to that, there are other ways to be in those rooms that's not necessarily being there physically. So books, right? A lot of people who have some of the best ideas passed away a long time ago, but their ideas live on. So you can be in that room and talk to that person through the knowledge that they've left, through online courses, through technology, even this podcast. I mean, I don't think we're the smartest guys ever, but hopefully there's value that people get from this. And even us, we try to put ourselves in the proximity of people that we look up to and say, wow, how did you get to that thing? How did you achieve this? And then they show you sort of a roadmap to how to get to where you want to be. Yeah, so there are other ways to get access to it.
Exactly. And what surprises me is most times when you talk to people or engage with people who have done great, they're very successful.
Yeah.
And you ask them, what would you say contributed to you getting here? Most times their answers are very simple. They have an understanding of reducing whatever they have done or they consider important to very simple list.
Yeah, or like life principles.
Yeah, life principles. Some will tell you, be bold, take the risk. I mean, it's for them, it's as simple: be bold, take the risk.
Yeah.
I saw another one who said, never take no for an answer. So if somebody is telling you no, just work on it until you find the answer, the proper answer to that circumstance or issue, challenge. And maybe it's always that simple. Maybe it was never meant to be complicated, but you cannot learn that it's simple until you've been with an expert. Maybe if we ever sat with Tiger Woods and asked him, what is one thing that you tell us that will make us good golfers, excellent golfers? Maybe you'll just tell us 3 things. And then you'll be complicating it, lying on the grass, reading the green.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's always people in some way or another that affect you and change you and guide you in one way or another. So being in proximity to them, I was watching a video just the other day on Tiger Woods, which we can talk about Tiger Woods and Tiger Woods videos forever. But the video was basically Tiger Woods talking to these young guys who were coming up in the game. And he's telling them a story about himself when he was 19 years old and he was playing with these like legends of the game. And this is pre-cell phones and everything. And he was so nervous to talk to them, but his caddy knew them. So he was like, oh, talk to this young Tiger guy. He's up and coming. And so he then got the courage to speak to these pros, these legends. And they said, oh, in a couple of months' time when you're at this tournament, just show up early. Let's go on a Tuesday. We'll hit some balls and we'll walk you through our game and that type of thing. And he said he waited for 3 months because there's no cell phones. He didn't have their numbers. He was just waiting to get there and see if they even remembered that they agreed to go to this thing with this random 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he got there on a Tuesday and they were there and they played. And that's how that relationship started. And he learned so much from them that impacted his game, right? So it's putting yourself in those rooms with those people. So if he didn't have that relationship, I mean, I'm sure he'd still be a great player, but there's something that they did for him that no one else did and that made him who he is today. Or, helped him achieve what he's achieved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have something interesting for us for the week?
Oh, okay. 2 actually. One is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
This week I was scrolling through. The thing with LinkedIn is even if you're not connected with someone, when someone within your network either likes or reposts something they've said, it comes to your feed and you're able to interact with it. Now, I don't remember the name of this gentleman, but he was holding a placard that says, "I can keep calm. I have been admitted into Oxford."
Okay.
So
that classic, I can't keep calm.
Exactly. I can't keep calm. And it was a story about what he has accomplished. Basically, it was a long post, actually. But I like the fact that, with long posts is you start, you're like, this is too long. But he started the post by saying, he wrote a few things and then said, read to the end. So I had to read to the end.
That's how they get you. That's how we should start our videos.
Exactly.
Like, watch till the end for a secret surprise to make you the most successful startup ever.
Or back in the day, there were sensational headlines. 7 things you don't know about Adrian. Number 5 will shock you. So you're forced to go all the way to see
BuzzFeed articles.
Anyway, but I read through, and honestly I found it very profound. Number 1, he listed his achievement, his accomplishments through his age. He's about 28 years old. And he seems to have accomplished very significant things. And then on the next side, he's like, on the flip side, let me take you through my challenges. And he explained about how he's gone through depression, how he has been sickly for the longest time, and actually even as at last year, I think, he was bedridden for the longest. And basically it was really significant challenges. And the conclusion of it is that, first of all, appreciate the good things that are happening in your life. Do not just see, when you see people's stories and their success, do not assume they're without challenge. And therefore you have no excuse for yourself, not to go through your challenges and find triumph through your challenges. And the other thing he was saying is that you can still go beyond the challenges you have to become a success. And I found that profound, because a lot of times when we see somebody has succeeded, a lot of people would have been happy reading, at 25 he did this, at 26 he did this. But even there was a time he was saying he had to drive for a politician to just try and earn a living, and then the politician fired him.
Oh no!
Yeah, he didn't have anything. But you would want to see this guy has been admitted to Oxford. He's
and
smart.
It's just success all the way.
Exactly. But that success has a story behind it, and it's no excuse. The challenges that you have in life to how far you can go or what you can accomplish. You cannot give yourself excuses. Far more endowed people than him, with less challenges, perhaps you'll never see the door of Oxford or anything close or equally related to Oxford. And it was a profound lesson to just fight on.
Wow, that's a good message, and kudos to him for getting that far and overcoming challenges and just persevering.
Thank you so much to our audience. Today we have gone through the discussion around the accelerators, incubators, and venture builders, and the value that they add, or how they function, and how best they add value to startups. We hope you have enjoyed the content as we have discussed. And if there's anything you'd want us to discuss more in detail, or if there's anything you think we might have missed, we'll be happy to get your feedback and comments so that we can, perhaps take that on in a succeeding episode. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to the next.
Thank you.
Goodbye.